Mastering communication channels. We've talked about email, Slack, and Asana, right? Doesn't mean you have to use these. These are what we use, but take these same principles and implement them into what you like to use. Slack can also be text messages. Email is pretty universal. Like I've said, it's probably pretty standard to email. And then Asana, you can use whatever project management software you want, but we're going to go through each one and how to use those effectively to communicate. So email, best for formal communication, obviously. Slack is for real-time communication. Asana. And then we've got video calls. Those are going to be for more in-depth discussions, problem-solving, brainstorming sessions. And these can be in-person meetings as well if the client's local. But those are going to be, the bigger conversations. When and how to use each tool effectively. So email, project updates, formal requests, delivering final assets, when you have to update a group of team members from the company you're working with. You can do that in Slack too, inside of like your teams or your channels. But email is great. Email also doesn't feel like you have to respond right away, and so that takes a lot of pressure off of people. So how to use, keep subject lines clear and actionable, use bullet points, headers. And that's part of like not just filling it full of fluff and making long paragraphs and so people have to read a lot. It's just like boom, 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 bulleted, call to action, request for feedback. So Slack, when to use, immediate clarifications, short updates, collaborative, on creative ideas or sharing quick progress notes, time sensitive questions. This can also be text messages if that's what they prefer. So these are where, keep messages concise. Emails where you're going to like maybe write a little more, but you still want to be concise to the point. But this is going to be quick. You've got dedicated channels for each thing. So maybe you're in certain channels to discuss different things. Asana, when to use, tracking project progress deadlines, assigning team members, documenting project timelines and deliverables. These are all things that we've talked about. How to use, create project funnel for each client. So go watch that course before this one if you haven't, and we'll talk about how to actually use Asana, how it holds people accountable. Video calls, we haven't really talked about this, but this is pretty self-explanatory. When to use kickoff meetings, right? So these are those meetings if the client's not local. Even if they are local, these are great touch points to start with. Brainstorming sessions, sensitive topics, resolving misunderstandings as well. That's a huge one. So if there has been a misunderstanding, video call. If they can't do a video call, jump on a phone and talk to them. I think it's good too to like set an agenda, like an email or Slack about what you're going to talk about. Record calls with their permission so that you can refer later and learn from how they went, but also use it for training. So setting boundaries to maintain efficient workflows, it's a good topic, but it's also one that can be super effective if you're willing to be available after hours. I've had this happen many times where maybe there's a product launch the next day and I get hit up by the CEO. It's like, we need to make these changes. And if you're available in 9 to 5, you've just ruined a relationship. They will understand, but you have to understand that we are in a fast-paced, feedback-oriented industry. And so maybe when you step into a project, you have clear communication with the client that says, hey, I'm available during this project at all times so that we can make sure we hit this deadline and it happens. So there's some give and take to this section, but you can define when you're available, but also add auto responses if you're out of hours. And then when you're with the client, like you can set the standards for each of these communication channels. So email, Slack, Asana. Like if they're like, hey, we have a question and it's in Asana and it's urgent, we can be like, hey, just to remind you, we'll get back quicker if it's through Slack. But yeah, so setting boundaries early is good, but also explaining those boundaries and explain when you're willing to stretch them for certain projects. So that's going to be huge for creating long-term relationships when you can prove that you are available and you're willing to help them through projects and make their launches successful. So that's the end of module 3. We're now going to be jumping into module 4, which is structured updates and reporting.